Imagine for a second that you want to understand how a car engine works. Like, really understand it.
Okay.
Most people would just, grab the manual, look at the blueprints, learn the roles.
A logical approach, yeah.
But what if you did it a different way? A much harder, weirder way.
I'm almost afraid to ask.
Imagine you just took it apart, piece by piece. And not just the big parts. I mean, counting every single bolt, every washer.
Oh, wow.
And you had to do that for, say, 11 million parts?
That sounds like an absolute nightmare. The least efficient way to do anything?
It does, right. But that's basically the story we're getting into today. We're looking at a field called Corpus Linguistics.
Right.
And honestly, I thought this was just about, people who really liked making dictionaries, but it's actually this huge battle over how we even understand language itself.
It really is. It's a battle over what counts as evidence.
Yeah.
And you hit on the key thing with that engine analogy. Corpus linguistics isn't really a branch of linguistics, like studying sounds or something.
It's a methodology.
Exactly. It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a way of doing the science. It's studying language using these massive collections of real-life text and speech. We call them corpora.
And the whole mission of this deep dive is to see how we went from just trusting our gut feeling about grammar.
The armchair approach.
Yeah, just sitting there thinking, does this sentence sound right? To actually analyzing hard data.
And that shift from what we call rationalism, just thinking about it,
Yeah.
to empiricism, actually observing it, it completely changed everything.
Okay, let's get into that. Because when you say observing language, I'm thinking of computers scanning Twitter, but this started way, way before that.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the part I just can't wrap my head around. There's a guy named Ketting in 1897.
1897, before pretty much any modern technology.
And he decides to analyze German letter sequences.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a computer. He has, what? Paper?
He had a team and an unbelievable amount of patience. Ketting's group put together a corpus of 11 million words.
11.
By hand. Just picture that. A room full of people, day after day, making tally marks on paper.
That's madness. Why? Why would anyone do that?
Well, the early motivation was often practical. For teaching foreign languages, for example.
Oh, okay.
You need to know which words are most common so you can teach those first, right?
Okay,
You don't
yeah.
start with serendipity, you start with hello.
Right. That makes sense. So that's the Stone Age. When did the machines finally arrive?
The big breakthrough was in the late 40s, early 50s. And the push came from a very surprising place.
Which was?
Theology.
Yeah.
A Jesuit priest, actually. Father Roberto Busa.
No way. A priest.
Yep. He wanted to analyze all the works of Thomas Aquinas, a huge amount of Latin. And he went to IBM.
The IBM. The computer company.
A founder, Thomas Watson himself. Busa convinced him that computers could do more than just military calculations. And by 1951, he was using punch card machines to make concordances.
Okay, hold on. Concordance. The sources mention this a lot. What is that exactly?
It's a list, basically. Imagine your keyword, let's say love, running down the middle of a page, over and over.
Okay.
And on either side of the word love, you see the handful of words that came right before and right after it in every single sentence it appeared in.
Ah, so you can see its context, like who its friends are.
Precisely. You see the company it keeps. It's a brilliantly simple idea, and we still use that format today.
So we've got technology showing up. Then another guy, Alphonse Joulon, he adds another layer to this, right? He said just counting isn't enough.
Right. Joulon brings in the idea of dispersion.
Dispersion?
Think of it this way. I give you a 300-page book and tell you the word alligator appears 50 times. You'd probably think it's a book about Florida
Or a horror story, yeah.
But what if all 50 of those mentions are in a single paragraph on page 150 and it's never mentioned again?
Then it's not really a key word for the whole book. It's just a blip.
That's dispersion. Is the word spread out evenly or is it all clumped together? You need to know both frequency and dispersion to see what's really important.
Okay, so this all seems great. The tech is coming online. The methods are getting smarter. It feels like this is the moment where everyone agrees data is the future.
You would think so. It seems completely logical.
Yeah, okay.
But this is where the story hits a brick wall. A really, really influential brick wall.
Who could possibly argue with having more data?
Well, only the most famous linguist of the 20th century.
You're talking about Noam Chomsky.
I am.
It's so strange to think of Chomsky as the villain in this story. He's usually the hero. But man, he really did not like this stuff.
He had a deep philosophical problem with it. See, Chomsky's whole revolution was based on this distinction between competence and performance.
Right, okay. Break that down for us.
Competence is your perfect internal knowledge of a language. Think of it like the written sheet music for a symphony. It's the flawless ideal in your mind.
Okay, the ideal version. So performances.
Performance is the actual concert, where the violinist hits a wrong note, someone in the audience coughs, the conductor skips a beat. It's the messy reality.
So Chomsky was only interested in the sheet music.
Exactly. He argued that linguistics should only study that perfect internal knowledge. He called real-world data, all those corpora, degenerate.
Degenerate, wow.
He said if you study a corpus, you're not studying language. You're just studying a collection of mistakes, coughs, and stutters.
He had that really biting analogy, too, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, the famous one. He said it was like a physicist deciding to stop doing experiments and just videotaping things happening in the world.
Ouch. That is a serious burn.
It is. He's saying you can't discover the laws of physics by just randomly filming stuff. You need to isolate variables. You need to sit in your armchair and think.
The armchair linguist.
Right, the rationalist idea.
Yeah.
Your own intuition as a native speaker is all the data you need. You just ask yourself, is this sentence grammatical?
And he also had that point about infinity, which I thought was really powerful.
Yes, language is infinite. You can create a sentence that's never been said before. But any corpus, no matter how huge, is finite.
So a corpus can never truly represent all of language.
That was his argument. And for a couple of decades, in the U.S. especially, mainstream linguistics just turned away from data.
But then, the data strikes back.
It really does.
Because it turns out that sitting in your armchair trusting your gut, it's not always right.
Intuition is a very slippery thing. And there's a perfect example of this. Chomsky himself used one.
The perform labor one, right?
Exactly. He claimed, based on his own intuition, that you can say perform a task, but you can't say perform labor. It just sounded wrong to him. Ungrammatical.
You know, it's funny. When I read that, I thought, perform labor, that sounds fine to me. A bit formal maybe, but...
And you're right. Corpus linguists went and looked at the data in the British National Corpus and on the web, and they found lots of examples.
So the most famous linguist on the planet was just wrong.
His intuition was wrong. And that's the whole point. There was another case where he claimed a certain type of complex question was so rare you might never hear one in your entire life.
Let me guess. They ran a search.
And found they were actually pretty common. This was the turning point. People started to realize that our intuitions don't always match reality.
So, okay, the rebels are winning. But if you're going to use data, you need a standard, right? You can't just grab any old text.
And that brings us to the Brown corpus. This was a huge deal.
The gold standard.
It was, created in 1961. Now, by today's standards, it's tiny, only 1 million words, but its genius wasn't its size. It was its design.
It was balanced. What does that mean?
Think of it like a political poll. If you only poll people at a Star Trek convention, you're going to get a skewed result.
Right. You'll know how Trekkies are voting, but not the whole country.
Exactly. The Brown corpus was the first to build a representative sample. They took 500 texts from 15 different genres. Sci-fi, news reports, romance novels, academic papers.
So one really boring geology textbook couldn't throw off the whole result.
Precisely. It was a snapshot of American English in 1961. And because that structure was so clear, other people could copy it.
Which led to the Brown family of corpora. This is where it really clicked for me.
Yes, so they created the LOB corpus for British English, using the exact same 1961 structure.
So now you can actually compare American and British English scientifically. It's apples to apples.
And then, 30 years later, they did it all over again for 1991. They created the Frown corpus for American and the FLOB for British.
Frown is just a great name.
Isn't it? But think about what that lets you do. Now you can track how the language actually changed over those 30 years. It's like a controlled experiment for words.
That's amazing. So while the Americans were having this big philosophical fight, what were the British linguists doing?
They were mostly just getting on with it. You had people like Randolph Quirk at UCL just describing the language, but they hit a major problem.
Which was?
Speech. All these early Corpora Brown, LOB, they were all written texts.
Right. Books, magazines.
And for centuries, grammarians basically treated speech like a broken, messy version of writing.
Which is so backwards because we were talking for thousands of years before we wrote anything down.
It is ironic. But as spoken corpora became available, transcriptions of recordings, that view had to change. And it started a big debate. Does speech have its own completely separate grammar?
I mean, I feel like I use different grammar talking right now than if I was writing an email.
You use different patterns, for sure.
Yeah.
The consensus now from people like Douglas Piper is that it's the same fundamental grammar, but it's molded by the medium.
Molded by the medium. I like that. The rules are the same, but you use them differently because you don't have a backspace key when you're talking.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have the data, but there's still a huge bottleneck. The computer has the words, but it doesn't know a noun from a verb.
And tagging all of that by hand is just soul-crushing work.
Which brings us to my favorite part of this story, the lunchtime revolution.
It's a fantastic name. This was Jeffrey Leach at Lancaster University. In the early 80s, they developed software called the Clause Tagger.
And Clause could, what?
It could automatically guess the part of speech for every word with pretty high accuracy.
And the lunchtime part.
There's this great quote about how the workflow just transformed overnight. You could set the computer to tag your corpus while you had your lunch and come back in the afternoon to analyze the results.
That's the dream. What used to take years now takes a sandwich break.
It changed everything. It made the whole field scalable.
So we have the speed, we have the scale, and this leads to the last and I think most mind-bending part of this whole thing.
This is where we get to John Sinclair.
The Neo-Freudian.
Yes. And Sinclair looked at all this data and said, this isn't just a better method. This is a whole new theory of how language works.
Okay, how so?
Well, the traditional view is what he called the open choice principle. You have grammar slots, subject, verb, object, and you pick words from the dictionary to fill them in, like building with Legos.
That's how I was taught grammar in school. Fill in the blank.
Right. But Sinclair looked at the data and said, that's not actually what people do most of the time. He proposed the idiom principle.
And that is?
That we don't speak word by word, we speak in chunks, in semi-pre-constructed phrases.
So wait, I'm not building my sentences from scratch.
Not usually. You don't choose the word hard and then separately choose the word work. You retrieve the whole chunk, hard work. You don't choose of, then course. You choose of course.
I feel like I'm just a DJ hitting play on a bunch of pre-recorded samples now.
To a surprising extent, you are. The meaning isn't just in the word, it's in the collocation, the words that almost always show up together.
Which leads to this idea of lexical priming.
Yes, Michael Hoagie's theory, that when you learn a word, you're not just learning its definition. Your brain is also learning all the words it likes to hang out with. It's being primed.
So if you say black and...
Your brain just automatically serves up white. You didn't do a grammar calculation. Your brain is a statistical machine that knows those two belong together.
That really changes how you think about speaking. It feels less creative and more memory-based.
It's a huge shift. It suggests language is much more about pattern matching than it is about applying abstract rules.
So let's just recap this wild journey. We started with people literally counting millions of words by hand.
Then we got punch cards and the first computers thanks to a Jesuit priest.
Then we hit the wall of Chomsky, who said data was garbage and intuition was king.
But the data fought back and proved that our intuitions can be wrong, which led to standards like the Brown corpus.
And then finally, the computers got fast enough to show us something profound about ourselves, that we speak in chunks, not single words.
It's complete 180. From thinking about language inside our own heads to observing how millions of people actually use it.
It's incredible. So here's the final thought to leave you with. If that idiom principle is true, if most of what we say is just replaying these pre-made chunks we've heard before, how much of what you say is actually original?
That's the question, isn't it?
Are you really creating something new? Or are you just pulling from your own personal database of phrases, hitting shuffle and hoping it sounds good?
I like to think I'm being original, but the data might say otherwise.
On that slightly unsettling thought, thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.